The talk that I'm presenting today is around the information integrity. Just a simple caveat here, the views that I'm presenting here today, they are entirely mine and they have got no relation to my current or previous employers. The purpose of my talk, when I started thinking about, okay, what do I would like to present here and come and talk to all of you about. So the purpose of this talk is to put forward a stimulating thought which has been puzzling me as a person over the last few years while I have been practicing information security. So all of us know information security, basic core fundamental principles, something which has been written in the books, and the concept which was introduced to me even when in my engineering days, which is security is found of confidentiality. One of the pillars is integrity, another pillar is availability. So traditionally, this is something that we know as the CIA triad. It's a very famous term which is used. There has been a number of debates in the industry around adding more things like non-repudiation, accountability, access control to the CIA triad. But these three forms the core fundamental foundation blocks for the information security. And when we think about this, often I have been part of some of the conversations where people are debating about what is the priority? What's more important? Is it confidentiality that we should worry more about? Is it integrity? Is it availability? I have hall room discussions. I have discussions with the architects. Number of times this discussion is almost every project that you run into, these conversations starts appearing. Even though when I look at it, when we try to replay back the situation, I see businesses making significant amount of investment in putting the confidentiality controls, by putting strong encryption controls, by putting cryptography controls to make sure that data, when it is transferring between two systems, is being encrypted. And similarly, they are spending a lot of money around the availability to make sure the systems are available, information is available. Whereas when I look at the integrity as such, for some reason across the industry, it's being assumed that once you encrypt the information, when it is being transferred from one system to another system, or the system is or the information is stored on a tape drive, or it's on the hard drive, or in the database while it's at rest, is considered suitable, is considered okay. So, and that's the point I'm trying to make here, which is integrity is kind of left alone. Although we talk about CIA triad, how they work together, but somehow integrity controls are not given the importance as it should. So all of us, I think, from the security terminology or the technical aspects, we understand what integrity means. So I have been talking to a few business people, trying to really understand for them, what do they understand about the integrity. So for business terms, what they mean or what they try to relate back, that the information which is given to them is quite precise. And the information that is being presented to the board or the business people, they assume and they expect the information to be accurate at any point of time. And the information is complete because they are taking some critical business decisions based on the information. And partial information, incomplete information can often lead to various either the wrong decisions or can have a devastating impact. And what they also expect, the information is unmodified. So something which was supposed to be presented to them, something which is relying in the data warehouse while this is being presented in the business intelligence report, is being unmodified when it goes to the board members. And the information is the correct and true reflection of the situation on the ground. In a nutshell, from a business person's point of view, what they are trying to say is that we need to have trust in the data. Today is the information age. We talk about the information is the power for the business, is a powerhouse. So business processes most of the time are relying on this data which is presented to them to make an informed decision on some of the critical business. So if you are one of the simple example is if a business is trying to enter into a new market segment or trying to enter into a new region. And they are looking at some of the, let's say, merger and acquisition options. So most likely the board directors or the people who are doing the due diligence, they are looking at some numbers. They are looking at what the balance sheet looks like, what's the risk exposure that the company has, is it a viable target for us to acquire? And everything is being decided based on that information which is presented to them. if this information is not a true reflection and they can't trust the data, most likely it will end up making a wrong business decision. A real life analogy to this as well is, all of us understand the concept of chain of custody, which is if a security investigator has gone to a site where the crime has happened, they have used the forensics examination techniques to collect the evidence. But when this evidence goes into the court of law and is presented to the jury, what jury expects is to have the trust that the information which was collected on site has not been tampered with until it has reached the courtroom. So what they expect to see is the chain of custody of that evidence throughout its life cycle, from the time it's being collected to the time it's presented to the jury to make a decision. Now, I would like to use few examples first to bring this concept to reality, the discussion point that I'm trying to put forward here. And I'm going to use examples from various industry segments, industry domains. One of the classic one and my favorite one is the financial industry, the payments. I think all of us are familiar with a very old-fashioned and traditional method of paying someone, which is we write checks. Although today we do less and less, but if I talk to my father and our parents, and most of the time that the method they used to make the payments was either a check or a cash. So if I write a check to Chris saying I want to pay Chris so and so amount, so I open my checkbook, I write Chris's name on it, I say how much money I want to pay him, and I put a signature on the bottom of the check. As soon as I do that, that small piece of paper has become an official payment instrument. And if we look at the chain, how the check progress, so I give it to Chris, Chris goes and deposit in his bank. And once he deposits that check in his bank, it goes to the clearinghouse in the back of a van, comes to my bank. And my bank, before they make a final decision on pay or no pay, they check whether the instrument with the paper check is a genuine check, it has not been tampered with. They make sure there is enough money in the account, and they make a check of my signature, which is on the bottom of that piece of paper, to make sure the right person has signed that piece of paper before they honor that check and make a pay or no pay decision. So what bank is trying to do is making sure that piece of document has not been tampered with before they are making such a crucial business decision. That's the traditional way. Now, today, one of the recent advancement in the payments world is the faster payments. With the faster payments coming in, we don't have to wait for 3 days of lead time before the money hits into account if we are making an electronic transfer. Now it's a matter of few seconds or minutes before the payment gets transferred. Now if we look at how that process works is, if I'm a customer, I am going to use a token, whether it's a handheld device, one-time password, or any other method which bank has given me to authenticate and electronically sign that transaction and submit it to the bank, asking the bank to transfer X amount of money to Chris's bank account. Now, when this message is when I submit the transaction on the online channel, or whether I use some other channel which is phone banking or whatever, that small piece of information, which is the signature, electronic signature, gets stripped off from that payment message while it is being transmitted across various systems. It's encrypted, so the payment message is encrypted to ensure the payment message is not being tampered while it's being moved from one system to another system. But this payment message, the original payment message, by the time it hits the backend payment platform, has gone through various changes, whether you call that payment enrichment, whether you call that some of the payment transformation messages, or the message has to be changed in a different format which is understandable by the backend payment platform, which is the legacy platform. So when that payment message hits the backend platform, and that's the time when the decision has to be made, whether that's an authentic transactions or not, before a pay or no pay decision is made. At that point, if we try to relate back to the check analogy, there is no way of payment platform to be sure and have an assurance that this payment message which was generated from the customer is the same and has not been tampered with. Another example I would like to talk about is the online stores. So we have seen a lot of development in the way we do business. Previously, we used to, I think a decade back or so, we used to walk down to the high street and do most of the shopping, but number of shops have disappeared from the high street. Number of shops have gone completely online. And recent stats shows how much online shopping is happening and how much online shopping is contributing to the economy. In the old traditional days, if a shopkeeper wants to find out what's the inventory left, so they want to find out at what point I have to reorder my stock, so there is enough articles available for me to sell, is they will go and make a floor check. They'll go to the racks and find out how many items are left, and if it is going below the threshold, they will make an order. But now, if we try to see how all of these big online stores work, is we are making that when we are making that shopping online, I'm going to Amazon, I'm going to Tesco, I'm going to any of these online stores, I am selecting the item, and it is telling me, and at the same time there are multiple people who are selecting the item, which is, let's say, a favorite product, new iPad which is launched. And in this new world, what I'm doing is I'm paying an amount of money before even I'm going to get my hands onto that product to that online store. An online store is giving me a commitment that this product is going to be with me in next, let's say, 1 working day or 3 or 5 standard delivery or whatever. But that's a commitment which is given to me as a customer while I have given them an amount of money to purchase that product. Even though the data which is sitting in the database, which is telling them the status of their inventory, if it is encrypted or not, it doesn't matter to me. What I care about is the promise which is given to me, which is my product is going to hit my door at so and so date. The vendor is able to honor that commitment. And if the vendor does not have trust in the data which is sitting in the database, where somebody is tampering with the stock which is available, which is telling them this amount, these many items are available in some warehouse somewhere in some part of the country, then most likely they will end up making wrong commitments, and it's a significant damage to the reputation when we talk about the online channel where most of the business is happening online. Another example is from a very different industry segment, which is utilities, electricity. So there are recent advancements in these smart meters are being introduced to bring efficiency and reliability. What utility companies are trying to do is come up with the idea of making consumers smarter and changing their pattern of the way they use these utilities so that they can be charged at different rate at different time of the day. And what is driving this is a smart grid technology which government is trying to push through. So smart grid technology is basically around utility companies becoming smarter about the power generation, power distribution, and also managing the demand and supply in real time. So smart meter will give them, and smart grid technology will give them ability to read meters and to check their usage patterns without somebody visiting. It's remotely they can do all that. But recently, one of the FBI investigation talked about how smart meter installations have been tampered, and they have cost just a single US electric utility companies hundreds of millions of dollars annually. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. When this technology is being rolled out, what's most important for utility companies is it doesn't matter whether the reading is encrypted on the wire while it is being transferred from smart meter to the smart grid. What's most important is they are able to trust that data, that the integrity of the data is not breached. And if some tampering has happened with the smart meter, that should be able to flag, and that should be able to say we don't trust this data anymore. Another example is my personal experience. I had a L4, L5 slip disc around 2 years back, which caused me significant concern. So I was not mobile. I was bedridden for a while, and I had my spinal surgery last year. This is the MRI scan, which is showing the displacement, which was pinching my nerve roots, so I was not able to use my right leg properly. So spinal consultants did this MRI, found that okay, that needs to operate on me, and that's how the course of treatment was decided. I still have some problems, so I was referred to a pain management department. I visited them last week, and what I realized was they were accessing a system where there was no films of MRIs, there were no reports which were there in my file, which were talking about the results from various tests which are done on me. So this consultant who has no history, who doesn't know me, who has no history about me as a person, all he knows is this customer ID. So using that customer ID, that doctor or the consultant is opened my file on the system. On that system, he had all the history, starting from my first MRI to my second MRI to some of the recent tests which are done. And based on that, he is making a decision on the right course of action for me. It's important. I do expect my information, my health records are kept confidential by the healthcare department. But at the same time, what that consultant expect and what even me as a patient expect from the healthcare department is when they are putting this information in the system, it's not being tampered with. The integrity of the data should be kept intact. So MRI scans happen, that machine automatically fed those scans back into this healthcare system. I don't want somebody would have changed this, because otherwise in healthcare industry, the person may end up making a decision that I need another invasive surgery. That would mean that it's a matter of life and death. Based on some of your test lab results, you're going to decide what's the amount of anesthesia needs to be given to the person when the person is going for the procedure. So all these things in a healthcare industry, if the data is inaccurate, can have the catastrophic results. So these are about some of the examples from financial, retail, utilities, healthcare. The point I'm trying to, when we replay all of these examples and many more from other verticals we can talk about, it's quite evident that even though confidentiality is important, availability is important, so we need to protect the information, we need to make it available, but having a trust in the data is also very important. We need to be sure the data has not been tampered with throughout its life cycle. Now, we need to ensure that electronic records first, they're trustworthy. We can rely when we are making those decisions on them, and they are equivalent to paper records. So if I talk about the MRI scan, which is, maybe let's say it's a film which is in front of me, I know it has not been tampered with. It has a time stamp on it, it has my name on it, it has other things which is there, which was given to me immediately after the scan. Now we need to ensure the authenticity and integrity of the electronic records. So the moment it's being created, till the time it is residing in the database, we should be able to say, yes, this is the same record which was being created and it has not been tampered with throughout its life cycle. And recent advancement around cloud is more and more services are being exposed to the cloud for obvious reasons where you want to reduce the cost. So data which used to reside internally within our environment now is being residing in cloud. So initially we used to have a trust, okay, this data is being processed on a system which is managed by our internal employees. So there are insider people who are looking at the data, monitoring the data, but now we don't even know the professionals or the people or what part of the world they are being monitoring this data, or they are managing these systems on which data is being processed. So when this data is being stored in the cloud, we need to have that trust quotient in the data if we're going to make business decisions based on that. Now, I would like to bring back this discussion to, okay, that's about what's the problem exists and where we are leading to. But whenever we have this conversation around CIA priority, okay, what is more important? So because of cost reasons, because of design reason, or because of any other reason, if we have to sacrifice a control, if we have to decide which one takes priority, we need to be able to establish that priority order for CIA. How do we do that? How do we come to, so I had multiple discussions over the last few years where there's no standard way of defining that. So most of the time we get a very subjective answer which talks about, it's very difficult to decide. A typical security consultant will say, yeah, you know what, it depends on situation to situation. But how do you come to that conclusion? On what basis we make that informed decision that while I'm designing the system, I need to build that integrity control in it? So there's no silver bullet to this. All of us understand the concept around these controls. If we try to retrofit in today's world, it's going to be a very big problem. So when we are designing our systems, we have to start thinking about that. We have to start thinking what is more important and how do we build that control in when we are designing our system. Otherwise, the biggest problem that happens is cost a lot of money to retrofit. And when we go back to the business and talk about we need to put these controls in place, which is going to cost X amount of money, most likely because of the cost reason, complexity reason, the idea gets shut down and we compromise and we sacrifice such controls. Now, how do we define that priority order if we are doing the system design? How do we go about it? I think one of the simple solution to this is if we do an information security impact assessment or the business impact assessment, whatever we call, the idea as an example is what would be the impact to the business if the information which is presented to the business, they don't trust the data because that data may be inaccurate. So if that data gets tampered with and if we can't guarantee the integrity of the data, what would be the impact? Then we can look at the impact. Okay, what would be the impact on the management decision if they are trying to go into a new market to acquire a business, and if we can't provide that guarantee on the integrity of the data, what would happen? What would happen to the customer confidence? As an example, I was giving an example around online retail business. If they are not able to honor their commitment because based on their inventory being inaccurate, what would happen? What would be the financial impact? So in case of the banking industry, every banking entity has to report their liquidity position to the Bank of England, to the FSA, to the regulators. And if that data is being tampered with and they don't have that confidence in the data and it's being wrongly done, there's a significant penalties associated with it. That's the financial impact. So what would be the legal and regulatory impact? We can talk about the reputation, again, as an example around whether it's the healthcare industry or the online retailers. So what would be the impact on the reputation if they end up making wrong decisions based on the wrong data? What would the business partner impact, business disruption, and not to say, but everything comes with the loss of business. If Amazon tomorrow have a problem in honoring their commitment, which I make to the customers, so most likely they're going to end up losing their customer, which will have a straight impact on their loss of business, right? So that's a simple way of establishing a CIA priority, which should give you an indication around integrity is actually more important to me than encrypting the data while it is being put on the system. A usual approach generally around, I have seen the information integrity across the industry is, we believe if we encrypt the data on the wire or on the system, and plus we have access controls, that is good enough. So if we have a tight access control around who's managing that system on which the critical business data is being processed, that's considered good enough. But the problem that comes along with it is the access control does not provide you that end-to-end assurance. Example is, if we see a simple example, again the payment instruction when it is being raised by me on the online channel, so and when it is traversing through multiple systems, there is no way of guaranteeing when this message hits towards the backend that this has not been tampered with. Even though we may say this message traversed through 5 systems, we have good controls, but there is no way of that system knowing that. So we are putting an inherent trust based on the access controls and the encryption on the wire. Again, the chain of custody. So if we follow the same analogy, if the chain of custody can't be guaranteed, anybody can come in, the regulators or the external auditors can come along and they can ask you to show how you have maintained the chain of custody and how that message has traversed and how it was kept intact through those 5 or 6 systems. So what's the right approach? We live in a world where systems are getting more and more complex. Some of them are sitting in cloud, some of them are sitting internally, and the data is traversing through multiple hops. And we need to be able to assure that system has performed its role properly. It has not changed the data. Nobody is sitting on the system, no database administrator or highly privileged administrators managing that system has abused their privileges to change that data. We need that kind of assurance, and if we can't provide that kind of assurance, we can't provide an assurance to the business that they can have that kind of trust in the data. I have been looking at various options around, because of, again, it's an interest area, it's a topic which really interests me. So I've been looking at what are the ways, starting from system design, but that's fine. We can implement some of the hashing controls, design in the systems while we are building them. But also there's a new interesting solution which is emerging is around the keyless signature. Because one problem that comes along with even hashing and all those encryption controls is, as soon as you tell an auditor, as soon as you tell a regulator that we encrypt the information, they don't go about which algorithm you use. They don't go about what is the key length you use. The next question that comes along is, okay, show us how you manage your cryptographic keys. And if you look at the NIST or any other cryptographic standard, they are like, what, 500 pages strong, which talks about how you need to generate keys, how you need to revoke keys, how you need to distribute those keys, how you need to store them, and then there's a time period after that they expire. And once they expire, what happens? How do you get access to the old information because now this key is expired? So it comes with a lot of baggage. And so this keyless signature is a simple concept. I'm not going to dwell into much detail, but with the keyless signature, think of it like a binary tags which are attached to the electronic data. And the simple principle behind this is we should be able to prove the signing time. So when this data originated and when it was signed, who did it, who signed it, and not a single bit has changed while it has traversed from the origination to the recipient. And the purpose is simple, to demonstrate the integrity, which is to make the data tamper evident. And the another thing is, it's not just about key. It's not about if I have the key, only I can verify the data has not changed. But even this data is going to multiple people, multiple distributions, so that you don't need to worry about where my key is stored, and everybody needs to have the access to the key. The signed data can be verified by everyone. And the other thing is the keyless signature never expires. So you don't have to worry about, okay, what will happen if I'm using this data after 10 years, key expired 3 years back, can I still verify the data? I think this is just a very simple example around some of the innovation which is happening on this side, which I think was left alone for quite some time. But across the industry, still, my concern and what puzzles me is, we talk about the CIA triad. When we talk about the security, information security, we talk about confidentiality, integrity, availability, but we keep on spending a lot of money on confidentiality and availability. And we have lost sight around some of the use cases where it's not required to encrypt the data. I have seen various cases where the data is being encrypted. Whenever you implement these controls, they come at a cost. So cost of compliance, cost of implementation. So we need to be a bit more wiser around which control is most important for us. for that business purpose, for that data, for the information which is processed. Come up with a way of defining that prioritization criteria and then implementing those controls in an effective way, which is cost effective, easy to maintain, and also which is scalable. So that's a wrap as far as what I wanted to present here. What point I want to make is there's no silver bullet to it. It has to be a very well thought through process, starting from system design, looking at your system, looking at the purpose, looking at the information. Start from the information, what this information can do, how this information is being used, understand the context, come up with the prioritization, understand the integrity is important in such cases. If it is important, that needs to be built through the system design process. And we need to come up with some intelligent solutions to address that area, something which has been left alone for quite some time. Thank you.